Hi, I'm Jason Paltrowitz, Executive Vice President of Corporate Services here at OTC Markets Group, and I'm joined with Dan Zinn, General Counsel, and we thought we'd take this opportunity to discuss the recent announcement that we made regarding OTC ID and the shifting of the pink market and why we've done that. So to begin, I think it's important to kind of talk about the evolution of our markets to give you a little bit of a baseline. For those of you that have been following the company, since '97, when we really started this endeavor, the goal had been to take what was a paper-based, opaque market and put some structure and regulation around it. Fast forward to now, you've got a fully regulated electronic market encompassing 12,000 securities that are tiered on our markets based on the level of disclosure they provide, as well as how engaged they are in the investor relations process, actively seeking out U.S. investors. So there's our QX market and our QB market, and up until this announcement, a general pink current and pink limited market. The next evolution of that is that shifting of pink. And we're doing that primarily because although we've made those, those rules around QX and QB, on the pink market, there was really no way for investors to discern what level of disclosure companies were providing versus just information that was out there in the system. And so in trying to help investors better understand the level of company involvement in providing that information and certifying that information, we are really making this change. So with that as a little bit of the backdrop, Dan, why don't you kind of tell us why the market structure is important, the change to that structure is important, and why we made it?
Yeah, look, I think you hit the nail on the head by talking about it as an evolution, right? So we have come all that way from 1997 to now, and one of the impacts that we've made on the industry is that broker-dealer compliance departments and investors are looking to our markets and our categorizations as they make their decisions from a compliance standpoint, from an investment standpoint. And so we've reached the point where OTCQX and OTCQB are well understood, more premium markets. The market participants understand what those markets mean. When it got to the pink market and we were saying things like pink current, that wasn't really giving investors and compliance officers the ability to identify companies that were meeting a basic standard. There's a baseline of disclosure that's required. It involves some interaction with us by certifying to your compliance. Those are the kinds of distinctions that are going to be important to investors. This is us, I think, listening to what the market says and how people have reacted to our designations in the past and taking that next step so that now you'll have OTCQX and OTCQB as premium markets. OTCID will be a signal that identifies for investors and compliance officers companies that meet a certain standard. And then the pink limited market, which remains, will continue to stand for companies that are struggling a little bit in many cases to meet some kind of disclosure standard. I mean, from your perspective running sales and thinking about how we interact with all the companies on our markets, how do you see this impacting companies that maybe are right now in the pink current market or thinking about where they're going to fall?
Yeah, well, it's going to require that companies kind of take a position, if you will. Historically in the pink market, which encompass thousands of securities, companies really didn't have to take a position on how involved they were or what level of interaction they were having with us or, quite honestly, the investors. And so what this is really going to mean effective kind of next year is that companies are going to have to decide, do they want to meet that base level standard of providing information so that investors have that and feel comfortable in making investment decisions based on that disclosure, or are they going to, in effect, disengage and signal to the market that piece, that pink limited piece, is not something they're engaged in or interested in? From a process perspective, the way we do these things is through our disclosure and news service. That's how we get this information. That's how we provide the systems, if you will, for companies to certify that they're meeting those levels of disclosure. And so it is going to require that companies engage with us in that disclosure and news service. And so we will be actively communicating these changes, talking about this with issuers around the world. There's thousands of companies that are on that pink current market now, and we'll be educating them and going through that process. I think there's a key difference between ID and pink. From a legal perspective, Dan, what do you think an issuer should be thinking about as it relates to that?
Yeah, look, there's already a sense of what pink limited means out in the market. For companies that are in that category now, we ourselves put a yield sign next to that stock symbol, right? That's about as good an indicator as any that this is a security that investors should be maybe taking a little closer look at, maybe doing more research before investing, because there may not be the kind of information that they would normally expect to see available there. So when thinking about if you're a pink current company now and thinking about from a legal perspective or a compliance perspective what you should prepare for, it's really understanding what the obligations are, what, again, an investor expects to see in terms of current reporting, and making sure that you're hitting those marks. So for us, that's going to be updated disclosure. It's going to be a management certification that you are meeting your compliance obligations, and an updated company profile. This is, we said it before, this is basic level disclosure. This is not the active engagement of a OTCQX or OTCQB company, but basic engagement that pink current companies are likely able to achieve. If that's within your wheelhouse as a pink current company, and you don't want that yield sign, that pink limited circumstance going forward, those are the kinds of things you're going to have to prepare for. On the flip side, if you're going to be a pink limited company, you have to understand that distinction will become much clearer to investors, compliance officers, regulators, et cetera, and know how to talk about that, the things that you're not doing with respect to disclosure that an OTC ID company is doing, and certainly that companies further up the line are doing.
When this happens in 2025, it again is going to require companies having to take action. But I think it's important that companies really understand this isn't something we're just doing for the sake of doing. Whether it be the regulators in the U.S., the investors, the market participants, having accurate information, reliable information in the form of disclosure is incredibly important. So between now and kind of that July 2025 date, issuers will be hearing from us, understanding what needs to be provided, understanding what it means to be ID versus pink limited, the impacts of that. And certainly when, on July 1st, 2025, when the investment community wakes up, if you will, issuers and investors will see that those markets will shake out. The ones that wanted to participate, the ones that have provided the disclosure and those certifications will be on now OTC ID. And on that day, the ones that chose not to or were unable to will join that pink limited market. So, we're doing this now with a lot of lead time because understanding that issuers and investors and all of the market data and compliance feeds and the things that we do within the ecosystem of the U.S. equities market get done. And so there's no surprises.
Yeah. Look, to the good, and this is not to pat ourselves on the back, but to the good, I think the information we as an organization have been able to supply into the market by having these different markets has found its way into back-end systems so that brokers really understand what it means, like I said, to be in each market. That's another reason for the lead time here, is that from a compliance perspective, to your point, all the market data feeds that are involved in this, it's going to be important for everyone involved in the market to understand what OTC ID means, the differences between that and a pink limited company, and to be able to update their procedures and the way that they look at our market accordingly. That takes some lead time. It's important for companies. It's going to be just as important for investors and brokers on the educational side to understand what all of this means. And I think that's the key for anybody planning their next 6, 7, 8 months. That's going to be the key thought process to go through.
And in the next 6 to 8 months, you will certainly be hearing more from me and my team. You'll certainly be hearing more from Dan and others in the OTC Markets community. As always, feel free to reach out. Should you have questions or any comments, you can find us obviously at the email addresses on our website, OTCmarkets.com. But Dan, thanks for taking the time and hopefully educating a number of issuers and investors out there in the world. So thank you.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you.